Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to the people who are joining us today. Today's class, we're going to start with meditation, just like we do each class. We're going to first do some chanting to ease us into meditation. Then we're going to provide you guidance. I'm going to help you to understand how to be meditating as you're actually meditating. There's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're meditating, all of us here at the temple and anyone joining us online. We'll just all be meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'm going to start today's class. I'm going to teach you the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha that you would need to know inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down, in order to make your way to enlightenment. So we're going to take our time and walk through this. Then I'm going to have a mid-morning break. Then we're going to continue with the Eightfold Path afterwards. We're going to have our hour-and-a-half lunch break, or maybe even a little bit shorter today, just because of what we're covering here. And then when we come back in the afternoon, I'm going to be teaching you guys breathing mindfulness meditation, because up to this point you will have experienced meditation 3 times, and now it'll be a great opportunity to actually teach it to you so that you'll understand it. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the chanting sheets are back there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to do the chanting, and then I'm going to come in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโพตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิ นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเถวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So today is an excellent day to come to the temple to learn, because you're going to be able to learn this core central teaching of the Buddha, which is going to guide you to enlightenment. Remember, what enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind is permanently in this mental state where it's no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings and others are eliminated from the enlightened mind. You won't even experience the slightest displeasure by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll notice that your mind is focused, it's concentrated, you're having clarity of mind and deep memory, and your personal and professional relationships will really be blossoming, because you're not going to be bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships anymore. And you'll even get to the point where you don't have a bad mood, that the causes and conditions that are producing these kinds of things have been uprooted and eliminated out of the mind through training of the mind. But the way that the teachings of the Buddha work is it's that you've got to do the learning. You've got to learn, investigate, examine his teachings. You're going to need to reflect on those to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And you're going to need to practice those teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to be able to transform your mind. Nothing in the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. When we talk about awakening the mind, what you're doing is you're cultivating wisdom. And with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody either convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. So the Buddha teaches you to listen to his teachings with eager ears, where you're actively learning, you're actively growing, you're actively developing on the path without any belief. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about learning now, reflecting now to independently verify, and practice now, developing a wonderful life for yourself now in the present moment. And this happens through cultivation of wisdom. When we were all growing up, we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And because of that, we struggled and we had difficulties. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, we had all kinds of difficulties. We cried and we were upset because of this. We lacked wisdom about a natural law, and we went out into the world inadvertently making unwise decisions that led to unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law of gravity. So we might say that now we fully awoke to this natural law of gravity. And now we make wise decisions related to this natural law of gravity. And therefore we experience wholesome results. Where when we lacked wisdom in the past, we made unwise decisions and it led to unwholesome results. But now with that wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we're making wiser and wiser decisions. We learn to tie our shoes kind of tight. We look at the surface of the sidewalk as we walk through the world. We pay very close attention to what we're doing in our day-to-day life. We're not bouncing around and being so giddy like a little kid anymore. And because of that, we don't struggle with this natural law of gravity anymore. We can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we fully awoke to this natural law of gravity. So you're going to need to do the same thing as it relates to these other natural laws. The Buddha didn't teach rules and commandments that you would follow. He didn't teach rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship or prayer, any of those kinds of things. He's teaching you how to cultivate wisdom about these natural laws that are affecting you every day, whether you're aware of them or not. And when you lack awareness of these laws and you're having a lack of wisdom, then you'll go out into the world and inadvertently make unwise decisions that are going to lead to unwholesome results. This is where the mind struggles and has difficulties in your day-to-day life, where you might be experiencing anger and sadness or frustration or annoyment or guilt or shame or fear, any of these other discontent feelings that we talk about. So this path to enlightenment is going to help you to awaken to the natural laws, help you to be able to see this cause and effect relationship. The Buddha shares these 8 individual factors that when you understand what these are and you practice them and you integrate them into your life, the condition of your mind and the condition of your life is going to be gradually improving. But with a lack of wisdom of these, you're not going to actually be able to learn and grow and develop to be able to transform the mind and transform the life. So when I'm teaching you today, I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha, but it's important that you don't believe them. Don't believe what I say. Don't believe what you're seeing with these visual aids. You need to be able to learn, examine, and investigate. You need to reflect on those teachings and practice them. And I'm going to show you how to do that as I'm going through today's class. As we go, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. We have microphones here in the white bowl. Just get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. You can hold that up to your chin, and then you can ask your question. You can keep the microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question. And anyone who's joining us online, you can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So this eightfold path, the way you might think about it as like 8 individual dials. If you had a speaker system, and this speaker system, you were trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers, you might tweak these individual dials in order to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. And that's what you would do in order to try to get this better and better quality sound. Your mind is essentially the same way, that you would like to tweak these 8 individual dials in order to get a better and better performing mind. And as you do, you're going to see the condition of your mind in your life improving, because everything you experience is coming through your mind. Your mind is like the CPU of the computer. The CPU, if it's functioning well, then the computer is going to function well. But if the CPU isn't functioning well, it's not going to function very well. So your mind is essentially the same way. So I'm going to walk you through each one of these. This is broken down into 3 sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And we'll talk about each one of these as we get to them. And as I mentioned, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions as we go. So these are the original words of the Buddha on the Eightfold Path for right view. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So what he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching. He's pointing to the Four Noble Truths. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that other teachings integrate into, and he's got teachings like the Four Noble Truths that integrate into the Eightfold Path. Underneath of this line here, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths, just to help you build confidence that what he's talking about here in right view is the Four Noble Truths. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what those are, because with the Four Noble Truths, you can have a real breakthrough, because he teaches you in 4 simple statements. What is the problem in your mind? The cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And you can have a real breakthrough here today to understanding what it is that's causing these feelings so that then you can actually eliminate them. So here you can see that connection between the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. But now I'm going to teach you what's called the 3 Universal Truths, because these are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. In order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you're going to need to first understand the 3 Universal Truths. So I'm going to do this in a way that you can learn, you can reflect to independently verify them, and then you can practice. Because what the Buddha is teaching you is he's teaching you the way the world is. When the mind doesn't understand the way the world is, when the mind doesn't understand these natural laws, you'll go out into the world and struggle and have difficulties. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. So here with this first universal truth, he's explaining to you an aspect of the world that the mind typically doesn't understand in the unenlightened state. This is called the universal truth of impermanence. And these are all going to be building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. The universal truth of impermanence is helping you to understand that things in the world are constantly changing, that they arise, they change, and they fade away. These are called conditioned objects. A conditioned object is constantly changing. It's impermanent, meaning it is not permanent. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. Anything that you see, hear, smell, anything that you taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind, these are all conditioned objects. They will arise, they will change, and they will fade away. Okay, this is an important building block to help you understand when we get to the Four Noble Truths. There are things called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. They are permanent. The natural laws of existence are unconditioned objects, meaning they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. This is why what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was 2,500 years ago, because he described these natural laws, and those natural laws haven't changed. The enlightened mental state itself, when you get to that enlightened mental state, you've purified your mind of all the conditions that are causing those discontent feelings. Your mind is now unconditioned, and that's why the enlightened mental state is a permanent mental state. It doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. So enlightenment itself and the natural laws of existence are unconditioned objects, where everything else in the world around you is all a conditioned object. Anything you can see, hear, smell, taste that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. Okay, so this is a little bit of the learning on the universal truth of impermanence. That's the learning, the examination, the investigation. But now you would like to move this into reflection, because you're not interested in believing what I have to say. You would like to independently verify this for yourself. And what I suggest you do is you look around the world and you try to find something that you can either see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body or goes through the mind that is permanent. And if you can find something that's permanent, this is not a universal truth. This has been disproven. But if you can't find something like that, then you'll know that this is the actual truth, and then you'll have more wisdom about the world, about how everything around you is constantly changing and impermanent. So what I suggest you do in your reflection is start with something that you're familiar with, like this human body. You're very familiar with this because you've been with it throughout your entire life. You can ask yourself, is this body permanent? Or is it impermanent? If it's permanent, that means it's been exactly the same your whole life. It's never changed. If this body is impermanent, then that means it's been constantly changing. So what would you say? Is this body permanent or is it impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing ever since conception. When the egg and sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. We get moles, we get pimples, we get wrinkles, we get gray hair, we lose our hair, we get some extra fat, we get taller and shorter. All these different things are happening where our skin complexion is changing, the color is changing, our hair is growing, it's being cut, and then it grows some more. There's this constant change with the physical body. Okay. What about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent or are they impermanent? If they're permanent, you've had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, then that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life throughout your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? Constantly changing. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Very impermanent. Okay. So maybe goes up and down and up and down, or some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's goes down, 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 right? It's constantly changing. And with your 3 kids, Jake, I'm sure your bank account's constantly changing, right? Right? Going up and down and up and down, right? What about the weather? Is the bank account, or I'm sorry, is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent. It's constantly changing, right? It's sunny now. It might be raining. It might be something else. In some places in the world, it snows and sleets and tornadoes and hurricanes and typhoons and all these different things, right? So we could go on and on and on and on. And if that's what you need to do that, because you need to be able to see the truth for yourself. When you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is impermanence. Here in Thailand, some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't. Some sidewalks go up and down. That's impermanent too. When you're walking down the street, you have to walk up to get on the sidewalk, and then you have to walk down off the sidewalk. This is impermanence too, right? You can look at the temple. Some of the wood planks are certain lengths. Some of them are longer or shorter. Some of them are certain colors, certain texture, certain shape. Everything around you is constantly changing. We started off this morning with a certain number of students in our class, and now there's a different number. That is impermanence, right? Things are constantly changing in the world around you. This is a building block for when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So just keep this in mind, that everything in the world around you is constantly changing. This is very important, okay? The second universal truth is the universal truth of discontentedness. I'll explain to you guys what this is, and then I'm going to circle back and help you understand it in a different way. Because depending on where you've been learning, some people refer to this as suffering. You might have heard that the Buddha teaches about suffering. This isn't suffering. I'll explain to you guys what this is, but a lot of times people translate this as suffering. So I'm going to explain to you what the Buddha teaches on this, and then I'm going to circle back and explain to you why it's not suffering. So in the original source text, which is in the Pali language, the word that's used here is dukkha. This word dukkha translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. What the Buddha is describing in this universal truth is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, which are conditioned feelings. The mind is going to experience some feeling based on a condition. It's going to experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. Pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. Painful feelings are things like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Then you've got neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness there, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could think of that as a painful thing if you'd like. But shyness is a good example, right? It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or say you are on public transportation and someone you don't know comes and sits really close to you and your body's touching their body. You might say, it's not painful. It's not pleasant. Maybe your mind's uncomfortable or dissatisfied in that situation. That's neither painful nor pleasant. So what the Buddha is describing to you here is that the unenlightened mind is going to experience conditioned feelings of either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. What a conditioned feeling is that based on some condition, you are going to form a feeling. So if you look outside and it's sunny and you get happy because it's sunny, that is a conditioned feeling. That happiness arises, it changes, and it fades away. If you get happy when your bank account balance is up here, that's a conditioned feeling, that it arises, it changes, and it fades away. And then when your bank account balance goes down here, maybe the mind gets sad or frustrated. This is a conditioned feeling. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. Okay, so this is describing what the unenlightened mind experiences. As an unenlightened being, they'll wake up and they'll see it's sunny outside. They'll get so happy and excited, and they'll think, hey, I'm going to go hiking today. I'm going to go out on this trail and have a really great time. I've been interested to go on this trail for a really long time. And now they'll go take a shower, and they'll come out of the shower and they'll see it's raining. And now they'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. Their mind's going up and down or up and down. That's what discontentedness is. An enlightened being, they were already happy before they saw it was sunny outside. They're beyond these conditional feelings. Their mind doesn't experience conditional feelings. They experience unconditioned mental qualities where their mind is just always peaceful. It's always joyful. It's always happy. They're not basing their inner feelings based on some external condition. So an enlightened being will already be happy before they ever saw it was sunny outside. Then when they see it's sunny outside, it's like, sweet, we'll go hiking. I've been interested to go on this trail for a really long time. Maybe they'll go take a shower and they'll come out and they'll see it's raining. Well, guess I'm not going hiking. That means maybe I'll go to the mall, go watch a movie, stay home and read a book. Maybe I'll invite my friends over. I'll cook them some dinner. Whatever it is, they didn't base their happiness on the sun. So when the sun went away, their happiness didn't go away. Right? So this enlightened being is beyond these conditional experiences, beyond this pleasure and pain that is experienced in the unenlightened state. So the way that you independently verify this is that you know that your mind is unenlightened, and you know that you've been experiencing different feelings throughout your life. So you can ask yourself, does this explain what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant? Because the Buddha here is describing what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, and you should be able to see every feeling that you've ever had will map into this in one way or another. And where you're having trouble seeing that, let me know and I will help you. Okay? Now, some people refer to this as suffering. You might hear that from time to time. I encourage you to use discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. The reason why is the word suffering explains these painful feelings really well, right? It explains when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're frustrated, all those other discontent feelings like guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. That probably explains that pretty well, the suffering. But it doesn't explain the pleasant feelings or the feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. So if your mom called you and said, hey, I heard you got a new house, I would like to come visit you, and you got really excited about that, would you say you were suffering? Or if your boss gave you a raise and said, hey, we're going to increase your salary to $200,000 a year, and you got excited about that, would you say you were suffering? Probably not. So this doesn't describe, the word suffering doesn't describe what the Buddha is describing here. He's describing these pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. So you would only be understanding about 33% of his teachings if you use the word suffering. You'd be missing 66% of his teachings. So how could you ever get to the goal of what a teacher was teaching if you didn't understand 66% of what he's teaching on an important topic? So here, I encourage you to use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. You're going to need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones, because the conditional pleasant feelings are allowing the mind to get so excited or happy about a particular thing. And then when that changes, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. So in order to get beyond these conditional experiences, you need to be able to see the pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem, so that you can get to the unconditioned mental qualities where the mind is just always happy and always joyful. You'll understand why when we get to the next part of the Four Noble Truths. Then there's this third universal truth, of the universal truth of non-self. This is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. Yesterday, I introduced you to the 10 fetters, those 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. The very first one is called personal existence view. This universal truth of non-self is the solution for that. What personal existence view is, the problem that the Buddha discovered, just one of them, is how the mind clings to the body or to the mind itself, thinking that this is who you are. The mind clings to the self-image or the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. So you might cling to this body, this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now if you spill something on your clothing, like in a social situation, if you spill some spaghetti sauce or ice cream on your clothing, you might feel embarrassed. The reason why is because you're clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others a certain way. And when you're not being perceived that way, you experience the painful feelings like embarrassment. Or say you get a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you start losing your hair, something like this, or you get a little bit extra fat here or there. You might have difficulties and struggles with this because your mind's clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now when you're being perceived that way, you're happy, but when you're not, you're feeling frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or maybe you were like me when I was a teenager. I used to get out the gel and the mousse, and I would try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I went to school. We sit there in the mirror for 15, 20 minutes, trying to get every little hair in the right spot. So much so that I would sometimes even miss the bus on my way to school because I was in the mirror for so long, right? Or if you've ever put on a pair of clothes, looked in the mirror, and you were like, no, that's not how I want to look today. And then you went and changed your clothes, put on something else, and you're like, okay, that's how I want to look, right? You might have been looking through your mind about who am I going to see today? And how do I want to appear to those people? And you're not comfortable leaving out of the house until you appear that way. This is your personal existence view. And because of this, the mind's going to be shaken up to a certain degree based on the self-image. But then there's also a self-identity that the mind will cling to. This is like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, maybe your nationality or your job or occupation. Your mind can cling to any number of these things as being who you are as a person, where the mind thinks, I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Israeli, or I am German, or I am an Aussie, or any of these other things. I am a husband, I am a wife, I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a police officer, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a taxi driver. This I am is part of the identity that the mind is holding on to and thinking that this is who you are. And now you struggle in certain situations. So if you were in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you identify with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, but now when you guys break up, you might really struggle during this time because now you are single and your mind doesn't identify that way. And you might have thought the way to solve this is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. This is what the mind's going to do. It's going to think like, if I can just reassume that identity, then everything will be perfect. Or say you had a job or occupation, like say you were a police officer and you worked in that job for like 10 or 15 years, and then it was time to retire, or maybe you got injured and you can't do the work anymore, or say you got laid off or fired or something like this, and now you're a taxi driver. And your mind is identifying with, I am a police officer. And now when you're doing that work as a taxi driver, your mind is uncomfortable with that because you don't identify with that as who you are. Or say you're in a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody is talking very pleasant way, very agreeable way to you about your nationality. Say 2 tables over, they're having a conversation and you overhear them talking about the country where you come from. Maybe they say, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle, or all Israelis are warm and friendly and loving and kind. And now you're like, wow, they're talking about me, and you feel so happy about that. But then 2 tables over, you hear another group of people talking in degrading and disparaging ways about the nationality that your mind is holding on to. And now, because you identify with that as who you are, you're going to be frustrated or irritated or annoyed. You might be ready to fight when you hear these kinds of things, right? Because your mind is hearing this disagreeable thing from this other person. So as long as your mind is clinging to a self-image or a self-identity, you will encounter certain struggles and difficulties because of this. You might have even heard some people, or even you yourself, might have gotten to the point where you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find myself. Sometimes people come to Thailand. They would like to find themselves, right? Or they go to other places like Mexico or different places like this. I need to go find myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I need to find my true self. Well, what the Buddha teaches you with the universal truth of non-self is you will never find yourself in Thailand or anywhere else, because the self doesn't exist. This is part of the confusion or the misunderstanding that the mind has, the misperception. The mind's going to try to grab onto these things as who you are as a person and wanting those things to be permanent. And now when they start changing, your mind is uncomfortable. So someone might come to Thailand and they might get a new hobbies, new friends, new job or occupation or things like this. And they might go back to their home country and it's like, yes, I found myself. I feel so good. I found my true self. Well, now after 3, 4, 5, 6 years, when all that stuff changes, they're right back into the same problem. They don't know who they are anymore, because the mind is clinging to this self-image or self-identity, thinking that this is who you are, when in reality, there isn't a self. So there is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence. But it's when your mind clings to it as who you think you are that it presents problems and difficulties within one's own mind. So you need to get to the point where you realize non-self, where you can realize that, for example, this body was born on a land that we refer to as the USA. Or America. But that doesn't mean that the mind has to adopt the identity of I am American. So you guys have experienced the same thing. This body was born on a certain land, but that doesn't mean your mind has to adopt the identity of I am this, right? And the challenge is that all through our life, our mind has been kind of geared towards adopting a self-identity. Depending on where you come from, there's probably a flag, a national flag. There's probably a national anthem. There's probably national sports teams that are cheered for and people get behind, right? The mind is adopting a certain identity and is being reinforced through social conditioning, through social experiences. So you need to be able to get to the point where slowly but surely you realize non-self, where you realize that this body is not you, it's not who you are. This mind is not you, it's not who you are, and you don't cling to it as who you think you are as a person. And this comes through training. There's gradual training and gradual practice here. So some people understand the universal truth of non-self when I first explain it to them. Other people, not so much. So if you don't understand this right now, it's okay. This Sunday, as part of the group learning program, I'm going to be going into this in a lot of detail and explaining it in a lot more detail. Where here, I'm just kind of introducing it to you. And it takes some people, I've seen upwards of a year just to understand what it is, and then to implement the practices to be able to strip away any kind of idea that this body or this mind is you, who you are as a person. So if you have any questions on any of these things, I'm going to open up to those here in a moment. But let me show you how to independently verify the universal truth of non-self, that there is no self. Okay? So think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now as an adult. Think about yourself, your character, your personality, and how you viewed yourself. Has it been exactly the same through all those 4 stages of life, or has it been constantly changing? Childhood, teenage years, early adulthood, and now. Have you viewed yourself in exactly the same way? Probably not, right? Okay, here's another way. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? What do you guys say? Are you less of a person if you only have one hand and one arm? No. Jake says no, right? So that's typically what people will say. So intellectually, the mind can understand that this body is not you, but then in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something about this body, you're going to experience conditioned feelings about that. So intellectually, you can understand it, but with the mind's confusion or the lack of wisdom or the misunderstanding, that's where the discontentedness comes in. Because if this body was you and that's what you knew and understood, you would answer that question differently. You would say, yes, I'm less of a person because I only have one hand and one arm. Here's another way. I oftentimes ask students to point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Nobody's pointing. Does that mean you all have realized non-self? Okay, this gentleman is pointing here, right? This is common. People will point here, or some people will point here. I am here, or I am here, right? So if you do that, you need to be able to think about and look at what is it that you're pointing to. So if we point here and we say, I am here, you're pointing to a shirt. If we took off that shirt and we held it up and we pointed to it, is that you? Is that who you are? That shirt you're wearing? Is that you? Now you say no, right? That's not you, right? Okay, so we got rid of the shirt. Let's throw away the shirt. Now I ask you, where are you? And someone might point again, right? Well, we've got to look at what we're pointing to. We're pointing to skin. Ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin that you've got. If we ripped off the skin and we held it up and we pointed to it, is that who you are? That skin that you've got? That's not you either, right? So we can throw the skin away. So where are you? And someone might point. And now we've got ribs, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs, we've got fluid. None of that stuff is you. They're just little bits and pieces and parts. But the mind adopts this identity that this is who you are as a person. And now that's where the mind's struggling because of its personal existence view. And the universal truth of non-self will help you to realize slowly but surely that this body is not you, this mind is not you. These things are in existence, but it's not who you are as a person. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions about the 3 universal truths, because these are building blocks to understand the 4 noble truths. Do you guys have any questions here?
So regarding discontentedness, like you mentioned before, that an enlightened mind might look at the sun and say, okay, I was already happy, but now I can go and take that walk that I wanted to take. Mm-hmm. Isn't the act of wanting indicative of discontentedness? I wanted to change something, I wanted to do something. Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that inherently discontentedness?
So that's what I'm going to explain to you here next. Let me just explain it to you. And I know you have a question too, Adrian. Is the next building block that you need to know to understand the 4 noble truths is craving, desire, attachment, wants and expectations. This is the longing, yearning that the mind has, where the mind is forming its inner feelings based on this condition. So the longing, yearning is like an unquenchable thirst, the mind chasing after something, forming its inner feelings on this external thing. So the mind will chase and chase and chase and chase. It's like it thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is providing some kind of lasting satisfaction. So now the mind is longing, yearning, and it can only be happy when it gets what it wants. And then when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or sad or frustrated. So this is called craving, desire, attachment. And you're going to see in the Four Noble Truths why this is occurring and how it's occurring and so forth. So you can choose to do something without it being a want or an expectation, without it being a longing, yearning. You can choose, for example, to come here to the temple and learn without getting so happy and excited. Yay, I'm going to the temple. But then when you show up and the door is locked because your teacher got in a motorbike accident, you're not sad and you're not frustrated. But if you have this craving, desire, attachment that I really want to do this particular thing, then you'll either be happy if you get it and you'll be sad and frustrated if you don't. So as an enlightened being, when you wake up and you're already happy and you see it's sunny outside, it's like, oh, great, it's sunny outside. I'm going to go hiking. And now you go take a shower and you come back and now it's like, oh, it's raining. Okay, well, I can choose to go do something else without it being a longing, a yearning, and a wanting. So say I choose that I'm going to go to the mall. And now I show up to the mall and say the mall's closed. Maybe there was a bomb threat or that doesn't really happen in Thailand, but let's just say that there was, okay? Let's say we show up to the mall and the mall's locked. Okay, well, the mall's locked. So let me see, what else can I do? Right? Maybe I'll just go home and relax, or maybe I'll go visit a friend. You can do these things without a craving, a wanting, a longing, a yearning, without forming your inner feelings on this thing. And that's what the Eightfold Path is going to teach you how to be able to do.
Yeah, I guess like maybe that was like with the small things I get it maybe, but how about, I don't know, if you have some specific goals in life or like a high level goal that you want to achieve. It's something that you have to gear yourself towards, and you have to work at it, and it takes time, maybe years. So it's not like something I can say, okay, if it's sunny, I'll take a walk. If it's not, I'll do something else. Like that longing or the drive to do it, like where does it sit with being fully contented?
So what you're describing right now is what the unenlightened mind does, right? That it's going to chase this goal, and if it gets it, it's going to be happy, and if it doesn't get it, it's going to be frustrated or agitated, annoyed, or some other discontent feeling. That's not actually a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. That's a longing, that's a yearning, that's a wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. But if you were all the way on the other side, where you could care less about what was going on in your life and you were just lazy and lethargic, you're not going to get to peace and joy there either. So there's this middle way that the Buddha is teaching you to be able to pursue a true goal, a goal, objective, or interest where you're making wise decisions to work towards it, but you're not forming your feelings based on whether you accomplish it or not. So now what the unenlightened mind does is it wants these pleasant feelings, and that's why it's chasing after this goal. But what you can train your mind to do is you can train your mind to come to the middle where you pursue things as a true goal, a true objective, a true interest. And now as you're making your way towards it, you're not getting so happy and excited. You're not getting sad and angry and frustrated. You're just gradually making your way towards the goal. And now let's just say you're 80% of the way to your goal. You can look at it and you're like, 80% of the way there. Well, I didn't get to my goal, so I could extend the timeline, and that would allow me to accomplish this goal. Or I could add more resources to be able to help me accomplish this goal. Or you know what? The 80% is just fine. I don't even need to go any further because this is more than fulfilling what I need. So I'm just going to hang out here and just be fine with the 80%. So in a situation where you're actually developing a true goal and you're pursuing it as a true goal, you don't have to chase after it and form feelings based on it. You can just make wise decisions to work towards it. But the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't know how to do this because it's been craving and chasing for so long that that's all that it really knows. So the wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha are going to teach you now how to do things in the middle way, where you gradually work towards things as a goal, objective, or interest. And this is going to take training of the mind to be able to help you learn how to do this and learn how to be joyful whether you accomplish this thing or not. And that's something that your mind needs to learn how to be able to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a question, Adrian? Yep. I don't think your mic's on.
So when I'm with discontentedness, it's arising when we cling to things that are agreeable or disagreeable. Now, things can be agreeable or disagreeable, but like the discontentedness arises when we choose to cling to it, correct?
Not 100%. The mind is seeing things as agreeable or disagreeable because of its clinging, because of its craving, because of its desire. We're not there yet in the Four Noble Truths. For those of you guys that haven't studied this yet, but a lot of these guys have already studied it. But the mind is seeing things as agreeable or disagreeable because of its cravings, because of its desires. And now that's where the discontentedness comes in. So let me get to the Four Noble Truths, and then we can talk about this a little bit more. Okay? All right. So now that you guys understand these building blocks of the three universal truths, this craving, desire, attachment, you need to be able to understand this. You need to be able to see it in your own mind. That if you've ever been in the mall and you were like, oh, new pair of shoes. Oh, I just can't wait to get those on my feet. They're going to look so great. Or, oh, a new mobile phone, new video game, new set of jewelry, new this, new that. And the mind's like, oh, I just want to get that so badly. Right? And the mind thinks that this external thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So if you can see this within your own mind, how your mind is doing this, this is what a craving, desire, attachment is. The longing, the yearning. If I can just get that thing, everything in life's going to be so perfect. It's like an unquenchable thirst. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, you understand? You've seen this before in your own mind, right? Where your mind's longing, yearning, wanting this external thing. Maybe it's a tattoo. Right? If I can just get that next tattoo, everything's going to be perfect in my life. Oh, it's going to look so great. My friends are going to see it. Oh, I just can't wait to get it. Right? There's some external thing that the mind wants. Right? And it just thinks if I can get it, everything's going to be perfect. It's a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, more money, a bigger job, a bigger house, a nicer car. I know what it is. Let's go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. The mind's longing and yearning for these things. Okay? This is a craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning. So now the Four Noble Truths is going to explain to you the problem, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to fix it. Okay? So the problem is that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. This is the problem that you're experiencing, the conditional feelings. The mind is going up and down, up and down. You'll have some peacefulness and joy here and there, but it's only a matter of time before your mind ends up in the anger, the sadness, or the frustration. You get so excited about these things over here, and then the mind gets angry or frustrated, irritated over here, right? So the mind's just going up and down and up and down, forming its inner feelings on something external. This is the problem that the Buddha discovered, the discontent feelings, the conditional feelings. The cause of that is explained in the Second Noble Truth. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. Okay, I'm going to explain that some more and give you some examples. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, our desires, our attachments, our longing, our yearning, those conditional feelings of happiness, excitement, elation, sadness, anger, frustration, shyness, other feelings like this, those pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. It's being caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. The mind craves this permanence, but yet it lives in an impermanent world. Okay, so here's some examples for you. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend, that brand new boyfriend or girlfriend that you got, right? When you guys first got together, you might have been happy or excited or elated. When you guys first got together, they were showing you affection. They were checking in on you, sending you text messages. They might have been inviting you to the movies, to dinner, you're going to the park, you're going on these nice walks, having conversations, things like this. You might have even been having intimate contact together. And there was all these pleasant feelings associated with having this new person in your life. But then it was a matter of time that as time went on, this relationship became frustrated and agitated, and you got annoyed and angry, and you guys broke up. And then when you guys broke up, you really got angry perhaps during that time, or really frustrated, or you might have felt lonely or bored, or you might have been missing this person. This isn't because of your love that was causing this. What was causing it was the mind was holding on and craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life, when in reality they are impermanent. Your mind was holding on. As long as you guys were together, you were getting what you wanted. But then when you guys broke up, the mind was experiencing impermanence. So another way to say this is not only that the mind is craving permanence, you could say that the mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change. So if you think back to times when your life was changing, that was the times that you were struggling the most, even if those decisions were from you. If you chose to move to a new location, you chose to move to a new job, all those different things, that change was very challenging for you because the mind was craving permanence. So you can look at this in other examples too. Like let's just say grandma and grandpa die, or mom or dad dies, or brothers and sisters, or friends or family like this. You might grieve or be sorrowful or sad. It's not the love that's causing this. And by the way, you're not a bad person if this is going on. This is what every unenlightened mind does. It's holding on to grandma and grandpa, wanting them to be permanent, when in reality, because they were born, they had to die. They are impermanent, but the mind is craving this permanence. As long as they're alive, you're happy, but then when they die, the mind grieves because it's not getting what it wants. The unenlightened mind lacks wisdom of the universal truth of impermanence, so it's holding on and it's craving this permanence. You can think about a wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding, maybe you've had brothers or sisters that got married, or friends or other family members, and when they're getting married, people at the wedding are crying or grieving. This is because this wedding represents the impermanent nature of this individual, that they're not going to be with me permanently. They're going off into the world with somebody else. And now mom or dad or brothers and sisters can be crying at a wedding, because now they're realizing that their relationship is impermanent and their mind isn't getting what it wants. Their mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. Or if you can think back to when you got dropped off at university, or when you were a child and you got dropped off at grade school, or if you've ever been around children, when children are getting dropped off at grade school, they're crying, they're upset. Why? Not because of the love, not because they love their parents, and their parents aren't crying because they love their child. They're crying because of the impermanence. The discontentedness is coming into the mind. The mind's realizing mom and dad are not permanent, so the children might be crying, or the parents might be crying or upset when this is going on. Right? So it's not the love that's causing this. Here's another example that doesn't include relationships, that you might be able to see this more clearly. Let's say you got a brand new car and you drove that car off the parking lot, you parked it at a store, you went inside, and now you came out and you see a scratch on your car. You might be angry. You might be frustrated. It's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the anger or frustration. And it's not the scratch itself. That's not what's causing it. What's causing it is the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting this car to look permanently beautiful when it's not possible. This car is impermanent. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn and things of this nature. You're going to experience impermanence with this car. But if the mind craves it to be permanent, when you experience impermanence, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So what I'm sharing with you here is that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. Because what the mind does in the unenlightened state is it wants to blame other people for the feelings that you experience. And when you experience those painful feelings, what you might have been doing is pushing people away out of your life, or you might be pushing the situation away. This is called aversion. You've probably pushed friends or family members away out of your life because you thought that they were the ones who were causing you to be angry or frustrated, and you were pushing them away, and the mind was thinking, I can get my cravings fulfilled. I can get my pleasant feelings if this is no longer in my life. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry. You still get frustrated. You still get annoyed. If they were the true problem, when you push them away, you'd be peaceful for the rest of your life. And it doesn't mean that they weren't doing something unwise, because they could have easily been doing something unwise, but that's not what was causing your mind to be frustrated or agitated or annoyed or angry. The other thing you might do when you perceive the problem as being external is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to convince them to do things your way through fear, your bitterness and harshness and hostility. And the mind's trying to get those cravings fulfilled, trying to get this person to do things your way. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on people and try to control them and force them to do things your way. And again, the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. And it doesn't realize, because of its lack of wisdom, that the real true problem is within your own mind, right? The cause of these discontent feelings is within your own mind. And when you come to understand this, there's real beauty here. That because your mind is causing these feelings, you can actually eliminate them. If it was everybody else that was causing these feelings, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. But before we talk about the elimination of them, let's be sure you have an opportunity to independently verify what it is that I'm sharing with you, right? Because you're not believing anything at all. You're looking to cultivate wisdom. Think about a recent time where you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. It might have been this morning, yesterday, last week, or some other time. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes. At the time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else for what you were experiencing, because that's typical what the unenlightened mind does. But now look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that you wanted? And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, what you were expecting, what you were longing for, you got angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Take a look at it. You should be able to see it for yourself. And if you can't, let me know. I will help you. You guys see it? Do you see the problem? The craving, desire, attachment is causing these discontent feelings. I've had students ask me before. I give this example frequently. I had a student one time. They said, David, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. It looked immaculate. I came home about 8 or 10 hours later, and my wife had this craft project all over the house. And I walked in and I got frustrated. How did my mind cause the frustration? Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? I wasn't even there, right? No, your wife didn't cause you to be frustrated. It was your own mind that caused this, because you were craving for that house to look a certain way permanently. You had the expectation that the way the house looked when you left is going to be exactly the same way when you come back. And now when you came back and you saw this change and this difference, now your mind was frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Right? The mind causes these feelings itself because it's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be permanent, when in reality, you live in an impermanent world. So I'm sure you've been in arguments before where you've been adamantly trying to convince somebody that they have to stop doing what they are doing because they're making you angry. I'm sure you've been in those kind of arguments before. But if you look back over your life, every single time that you've ever been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or any of those other discontent feelings, it was all coming from your own mind. This is the real breakthrough that you can have, because once you understand what's causing these feelings, then you can eliminate them. If you keep blaming other people for the things that you experience in life, you will never solve any of the challenges and struggles and difficulties that you're having. Because if it was everybody else that was causing you to experience what you're experiencing, you would have to train 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. and that's impractical. It's just not possible. Or you could train your mind. If you could just train your mind, just that one mind, then you can actually create real improvement and real progress to the point where you can completely eliminate these feelings. But you need to be able to see objectively that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And if you have trouble with that, let me know and I will help you. Because the third noble truth is helping you to see that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, then if you eliminate the cause, you will eliminate the effect, right? You won't experience the effect if you eliminate the cause, right? So by eliminating the cause, you will eliminate the effect. That's what the third noble truth is explaining to you. Then the fourth noble truth is explaining the path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that is going to guide you in eliminating your discontentedness. The Eightfold Path is going to guide you in helping you to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. That's why it's a core central teaching of the Buddha. But it starts with right view. Having right view is to be able to view the world accurately and properly, to understand what is truly causing your feelings. Wrong view would be to blame other people for what it is that you're experiencing. So if you blame other people for your feelings and emotions, you're having wrong view. And now you can't get to enlightenment because you have wrong view, because you're blaming other people for what it is that you're experiencing. But if you can establish right view, where you understand it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now you can actually make real progress. So you're going to need the wisdom of right view to be able to accept responsibility for your own feelings and your own emotions. So do you guys have questions on right view? Jake, you have a question?
So my question isn't necessarily, it involves right view. So I've recognized that this is my own mind doing it, but I don't know the path forward to eliminate it. The specific situation I'm talking about is my children have dialed in a particular frequency in their voice that causes me to go from calm to not calm in rapid succession. And so I understand that this is coming from my own mind, but I'm exposed to it a lot. So it is, but it isn't like, it seems way more difficult to uproot and figure out how to eliminate this.
So the mind has a craving, has an expectation, has a want for your child to speak a certain way and hear a certain sound. And now you've decided within your own mind, based on the craving, desire, attachment, that this is a disagreeable sound to me. And when the mind hears that, that's where the discontentedness is arising and the mind becomes uncalm. So you're going to need to understand impermanence, that not everybody is going to speak in the way that you're expecting. And you need to train your mind to let go. And that's where the whole entire path comes in. So as you learn the entire path, that's what's going to help you to be able to eliminate this. But you need to be able to first see in the wisdom section that it's your own mind that's causing this. So if you understand that, perfect. And now the rest of the path is going to teach you how to get the elimination of the craving, desire, attachment. Adrian, do you see the agreeable, disagreeable? That it's the craving, wanting things to be a certain way, that the mind sees it as agreeable or disagreeable.
I see that. Yeah, but like I'm considering now choices that we make, and like wise and unwise choices, and I'm considering that when I was asking that question of agreeable and disagreeable. Yeah.
So part of the unwise choices is coming from the craving, desire, attachment. Because whenever you're making decisions based in your cravings, your longing, your yearning, That's like the selfishness of the mind, wanting things to be permanently pleasing for yourself. And now when you make decisions based on that selfishness and that craving, that longing, that yearning, it's going to produce unwholesome results in your life.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sir? Not yet. Press it and hold it until the lights come on. By the way, for those of you guys that are on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you guys can ask questions as well just by putting that into the comment section if you'd like to ask questions.
I'm really trying to think of yesterday. I wanted information. I wanted permanence on a payment. And then I went on the tour, and that was changed on me. And they said, no, you're supposed to do it back there. I got irritated, and I'd like to really understand how I can keep from getting mad at that circumstance. It eventually worked out okay, but maybe it was just I'm looking for the thought process where I don't have the anger, but I just say, I will reach a solution.
Yeah, that's what this Eightfold Path is going to give you, because now what we're doing is we're going to build on this foundation of the right view, and now I'm going to teach you all the other things you need to do in order to get the mind to be content. But it's all based on the wisdom to understand that these discontent feelings are happening within your own mind. Because if we continue to believe that these discontent feelings are external, why would we ever change anything about our own life or our own mind? So that's why the Buddha starts you off with right view, to first understand where these feelings are coming from, so that then you can build on it from there. But do you see how your mind calls those discontent feelings? You do. Okay, good. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to the second one. And each one of these don't take the same amount of time to teach you. It's just that first one takes a long time because you really need to soak it in. Okay. Now we'll go to the second factor. In what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This is called right intention. So there's three things that the Buddha is talking about here: renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Some people translate right intention to right thinking or right thought. This is part of the wisdom section, where you need to build the thinking or the thoughts or the intentions within your own mind of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What renunciation is being interested in having the willingness to let go and give up your unwholesomeness in the mind, your false beliefs and opinions. There are certain false beliefs that you have right now that aren't serving you very well at all. One of the very first false beliefs that you need to be willing to let go of is the false belief that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. You're going to need to be willing to let that go when you see that this is not true, right? So you're not getting rid of your false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. That's not what you're doing on the path to enlightenment. You're cultivating this wisdom to see true reality. And when you see true reality with this wisdom and you see it's conflicting with these beliefs, you need to be willing to let these go. That's what the intention of renunciation is, that you have the willingness and the interest to let go. And there's other unwholesomeness that you're experiencing too, certain unwholesome things that you're choosing to do in your day-to-day life that you're going to need to be willing to let go of. Essentially, what the intention of renunciation is teaching is to have an open mind, that you're willing to bring in new wisdom and be able to let go of these things that aren't serving you well anymore. Because the whole reason why your mind is experiencing the difficulties and struggles is because of its lack of wisdom, its misunderstanding. So if you just held on to what you currently believe about the world, then you're never going to be able to get to enlightenment. So the intention of renunciation is to be willing to let go of these false beliefs, these false opinions, including the unwholesomeness. Be willing to let that go. But again, you're not eliminating your false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. You're bringing in wisdom. And when you see that wisdom is conflicting with what you currently believe, now you can feel comfortable to let that go and now bring in this wisdom that's going to now serve you to be able to understand the world around you. The intention of non-ill will, this is a double negative. So in English, whenever you see a double negative, that means a positive, right? So non-ill will is the same thing as goodwill. So you would like to have the intention of goodwill. Because if you have animosity and bitterness and anger and hatred, frustration, agitation in your mind, and that's coming out through your intentions, you're going to cause harm in the world through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. So you need to have active goodwill or loving kindness towards all beings and cultivate that as an intention within your own mind. Then you're going to need to have the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because any harm that you put out, harm is going to come back to you. And when I talk about causing harm to others, what I mean is causing harm to their material possessions, to their physical body, or to their reputation. You can't cause somebody else to be discontent. I'm sure not only have you been blaming other people for your feelings, other people have probably been blaming you for their feelings. You can't cause somebody else to be angry or frustrated or irritated, just like they can't cause you to be angry and frustrated or irritated. But you can cause someone harm. You can cause them harm to their physical body, to their material possessions, to their reputation. And whenever you're putting harm out, this harm is going to come back to you. So you need to get to the point where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. And this would be right intention, where you have the intention or the thinking or the thought of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Okay? So just to summarize this, right view is the Four Noble Truths, understanding the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward, right? The cause of these discontent feelings is craving, desire, attachment. You need to accept responsibility for your own feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. As long as you go around the world blaming other people and everyone else is causing you certain things, you'll never solve your issues because you're not going to be able to cultivate the wisdom that you need to be introspective and work within your own mind. So you need to take responsibility and accountability for the things that you're experiencing within your own mind and within your life. Then right intention is to practice the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go and give up your false beliefs and your unwholesomeness. Your intention of non-ill will, or the intention of goodwill or active goodwill, seeing everyone be well. And then you're going to need the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested in causing harm to others. Okay, any questions on the wisdom section? Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a break. It's now 10:35. Let's take a 15-minute break. Well, actually, let's just make it a 20-minute break. Let's make it 10:55, and we're going to pick it up from there, where I'm going to help you to understand the remaining sections of the Eightfold Path. So enjoy your break, and we'll see you guys at 10:55. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to continue on our journey here to helping you guys understand the Eightfold Path. We're going to move into this moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path. Whenever you're learning the moral conduct from the Buddha, it's important that you don't see these as rules or commandments, because that's not what he's actually teaching you. He's teaching you the natural laws. He's teaching you certain decisions that you make that lead to certain results. Essentially, what he's teaching you is this natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. And there's certain speech, actions, and your livelihood you're going to see that can actually cause harm. And when you're causing harm through any of these, then this harm is going to come back to you. So oftentimes when we have a lack of wisdom of the Four Noble Truths and we have wrong view, we perceive the anger that we're experiencing as something external. So we might feel justified in our harshness and our hostility and our bitterness towards other living beings. But when you come to understand right view, you understand that harshness and hostility and bitterness is coming from within your own mind, and it doesn't do you any good to be harsh and hostile and bitter to other people, because you're just damaging your relationships. And these are feelings that are coming from your own mind. You're not going to fix that by being harsh and hostile and bitter to others. So the Buddha is going to teach you how to improve your moral conduct, that you can get to the point where you're being loving and kind with all beings. So what the natural law of karma is, in short, is cause and effect, or action and result. You might be familiar with the term karma, which is from the Sanskrit language. The Pali language, which the original source teachings of the Buddha are in, they use the word karma. If this translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be easier for everybody, but it doesn't translate to just one English word. So I still need to use this word karma. What it means is the results of your decisions, that it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. There's no such thing as good luck or bad luck. There's no such thing as destiny or fate. It's not about God controlling the world, and it's not other people that are causing the things that you experience in your own life. If it's good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or if it's God, or if it's other people that are causing the things that you experience in life, that means you're locked in, that you can't solve anything about what's going on in your own life. But when you come to understand that what you're experiencing is the results of your decisions, then if there's anything that you don't particularly care for in your life, you just need to cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and experience different results. But if it's everybody else that's causing these things, or if it's good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or God or someone else, you're locked in. You can't do anything to solve anything that you're experiencing in life. So these teachings are based on understanding this natural law of karma. And that's what the Buddha is helping you to awaken to. When we talk about awakening to the wisdom of the natural laws of existence, this is the main natural law that he's helping you to be able to awaken to be able to see the cause and effect relationship between the way that you make decisions about how you interact in the world and how you experience things in the world. Because when you're being hostile and harsh and bitter, that's what's going to come back to you. But when you're being loving and kind and warm and gentle, that's what's going to come back to you. So he's going to teach you through right speech, right action, and right livelihood how to practice in a way that's going to produce the very best results for you in your life. And you need to be able to see the truth for yourself, that you're not believing what I'm sharing. And also don't consider this to be rules or commandments. So here's what I'm talking about. This is right speech. He says, in what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So there's 4 things that he's talking about here related to speech. And each one of these things are based in craving, desire, attachment. Because remember, in the Four Noble Truths, the 4th Noble Truth is explaining the way to eliminate your discontentedness is to practice the Eightfold Path. Everything that he's guiding you towards is the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. When an individual is lying, there's something that the mind is craving. It's wanting something. And if it tells the truth, it's not going to get what it wants. So the mind will lie. right? And if you've ever done a lot of lying, you know that your mind was kind of obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus what you said to another versus another. How could you ever get to peace and joy within your own mind if your mind is obsessively trying to figure out what you say to one person versus another? Also, people aren't going to see you as being reliable and dependable and trustworthy, and your relationships are going to struggle. And where the choice to lie is coming in is that underlying craving, that the mind wants something, and it won't get it if it tells the truth. So you're going to need to get to the point where you're comfortable telling the truth and you're not lying in situations. Then the mind can slander. Slander is like degrading and disparaging other people. This is like gossip, right? Where you might be trying to deflate somebody else in order for you to look good in front of other people. But you actually don't look good when you're actually slandering people. Again, this is coming from craving, desire, attachment. The mind wants to look good in front of others, and it thinks the way to accomplish that, because of its lack of wisdom, is to degrade other people and push other people and make them look down. And by making other people look down, they think that they're actually going to look good. But this is actually going to have difficulties and make you have challenges and struggles in your life. Because if you're slandering and gossiping about people, at the height of this, you can be murdered. Right? This is where, like, investigative reporters, for example, they get on the news and they might say certain things, and next thing you know, they're dead. Right? What the Buddha is teaching you is not the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And the way the world is that if you cause harm through your speech, your actions, or your livelihood, this harm is going to come back to you. So if you go out in the world and you're slandering and gossiping people, you're damaging their reputation, they're going to want to cause harm to you. At the very minimum, if you're slandering and gossiping people, when your back is turned, they're going to be slandering and gossiping you, because you got these people used to hearing slander and gossip through you doing that. So now when your back is turned, they're going to be doing the same exact thing to you. And this is all based in craving, desire, attachment. Then there's harsh speech that you're going to need to eliminate. Harsh speech is like your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. When you have a craving in your mind and you want something, if you get it, you'll be happy. If you don't get it, you'll be angry or frustrated. And now you might resort to harsh speech in order to convince somebody else to do things your way, right? And this is the mind trying to fear other people into doing things your way. So this harshness and hostility and this bitterness that's coming out of the mind, you're just damaging your reputations. You're damaging your relationships. You're going to need to be gentle and kind and loving and warm. So you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice so that you can get rid of any craving that's coming through in your speech. Then there's frivolous speech. What frivolous speech is idle chatter, where you or somebody else, you might have been around, you might have experienced this before, where someone's just like yada, 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 yada. A yada, 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 right? It's not really a conversation. It's more like broadcasting, right? Where you have this craving to just talk and talk and talk and talk. And it's unbeneficial, pointless talk, right? You would like to get to the point where you're purposeful, where you're clear and concise in the way that you talk. Because if you're speaking with frivolous speech, your mind is having craving, desire, attachment, and people are going to get to the point where they're just not interested in talking to you because it's like, oh my goodness, I have to work so hard to weave my way through all of those words and figure out what this person is really saying, right? So you would like to clean up your speech where you're not broadcasting to people, but instead you're having a conversation. So this is the section of the Eightfold Path where the Buddha is talking about speech, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. These are the four things that the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate. And you would like to focus on those to get started, because that's what's going to help you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. But then as you're getting better and better with those, you would like to dive into this, which is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. This is going to take you to a deeper level of understanding with your speech. And now you're going to be able to practice based on the natural laws, where you're speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. When you're speaking at the proper time, This is based on ensuring that you're not interrupting people, right? You don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you were to interrupt others, it's going to cause difficulties and complications in your relationships. But speaking at the proper time is also making sure that your mind is prepared to talk. If you're angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk. And anything that you say is going to blow up on you, right? Because you're just putting out bitterness and harshness and hostility. The third aspect of speaking the proper time is making sure the person you're speaking to, that it's the proper time to speak to them. Because if they're angry, if they're frustrated, if they're agitated, that's not the proper time to talk. They're not going to be able to digest what it is that you're sharing, and the conversation isn't going to go well. So you're going to need to pay attention to whether it's the proper time to speak or not. Then speaking the truth is the same thing up here that the Buddha is teaching. Speaking gently is the same thing up here that the Buddha is teaching. Paying attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Speaking beneficially is the same thing the Buddha is speaking about up here, where you're speaking with clarity and conciseness. You're speaking beneficially. You're speaking purposefully. You're not just yada, 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 yada. So it's not necessarily about the topic that you're discussing. It's about the method of how you're speaking, that you speak in a clear and concise way. Then the fifth factor is speaking with a mind of loving kindness. This is active goodwill towards all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of loving kindness would be inner hate. So if you're speaking with inner hate, it's not going to go well. So the Buddha is guiding you in understanding the natural laws about how to speak in ways that is harmless. But remember, you're not interested in believing any of this stuff, right? So you look at something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and you start reflecting on it. Look at conversations that haven't gone well for you. Certain times where the conversation erupted into all kinds of problems or whatever else might have happened. You can look at these 5 factors and you can see that you and or the other person wasn't practicing these 5 factors. So therefore, the conversation didn't go well, right? You can see that there was unwholesome results. Because remember, these natural laws affect you whether you're aware of it or not. So if you missed any of these, even if you missed one of them and you didn't practice it, your conversation has the potential to not go well. But if you missed multiple ones of these in your conversation, there was a really high chance that it didn't go well. And you can see that for yourself throughout your life because you've had enough conversations in your life at this point. But then you look at the other side of this too. Look at conversations that did go well. Right? Maybe some of the conversations you had at break, right? They went well. And other times in your life, you've had conversations that went well. You can see that you and the other person was practicing all 5 of these factors. Because remember, these natural laws affect you whether you're aware of them or not. So you weren't necessarily aware of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, but you were practicing them inadvertently, and so was the other person. But now what you do in order to improve your practice is you consciously practice these in all situations. And that's where you're going to be developing your mind to be practicing more and more in a harmless way. And over time, you'll develop more and more of a reputation of not causing harm through your speech, and you'll find that your relationships will really blossom and they will really improve. But as long as you're speaking opposite of this, that's where you're going to have the difficulties and the struggles in your day-to-day life. And the places where you'll have the struggles the most are the people that you're closest to. Your life partner, your children, your siblings, your parents, people like this, because you have attachment, you're craving, you're expecting them to be a certain way. And that's where your craving is arising, and it'll be challenging for you to be able to practice these. So this is why everything the Buddha is teaching you is gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You can't learn this intellectually and go outside and snap your fingers and instantly practice it. It's just not going to happen, right? You need to gradually work on this. So if you can independently verify this, you'll know that it's actually the truth. And what we're talking about here is there's something in the Thai culture called barami. What this word means, barami, it means the one who people listen to. The Thai people have this in their culture. They have people that have established barami. This is the one who people listen to. And what the Thai people know is that there's usually certain people in the community that have barami. And if you're living in a village, there might be certain elders in your village that people know that these people are really successful in life. And if you would like to get any help or any advice, you can go talk to them and they will help you. And when I talk about being successful, I don't mean successful financially. I mean successful in their relationships, that they have really harmonious relationships in their life. And people know that these people are having harmonious relationships. They're successful. They have barami, the one who people listen to, because they speak in ways that are wise, and the community knows this. So if you're interested in being influential and helpful in your personal life or in your professional life, you can establish barami, where you become the one who people listen to. But the way that you do that is through practicing these 5 factors. By you integrating these into your life more and more over the course of multiple months and multiple years, you will see more and more people will be influenced by the things that you have to share, because you're speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, not causing harm to others through the way that you speak. Then, as you're learning this, it's going to take you time to develop this and bring this up in your practice more and more. In the book, I have a lot of details. In chapter 5 about speech and about everything else, I teach chapters 4 and 5. That's the Eightfold Path in this book. And remember, you can get it for free by downloading it from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if you'd like. In the book, you're going to see a lot of details on speech, because there's a potential for you to cause harm through your speech, and this is where your relationships are potentially struggling in these situations. So where you have difficulties remembering the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, for the time being, you might think about this as speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. That's what you would ultimately like to get to, is you're speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, right? But ultimately, you're going to need to learn the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, because that's what's going to guide you in developing your speech. And while we're calling it right speech, because that's what the Buddha referred to it as, and that's what was going on during his lifetime, we might think about it as right communication, because you're going to need all your communication to be practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So for example, if you're angry and you're frustrated and you're going over to your keyboard and you start pounding on the keyboard to put out this email to this person that where you're angry in your own mind, that's not the proper time to be communicating. So you might decide to hit save on that instead of send, because when you hit send, this is putting out harm into the world in the way that you're being aggressive and hostile and bitter and harsh, right? So you would like to have all your communication be using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you went to a job interview and the job interview went really, really well, you were speaking great, you knocked it out of the park, they're thinking about hiring you, maybe giving you some big salary. If they look at your social media and they see that you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your social media, you're probably not going to get the job. Right? So you would like all your communication, whether it's verbal, text, posts, social media, emails, any of this stuff, to all be with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Okay? Then we've got right action. Right action is here from the Buddha. He says, "In what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action." So he's giving 3 things that are actions that would cause harm. And if you put out that harm, this harm is going to come back to you. You're going to learn more about this tomorrow when we talk about the 5 precepts, because the 5 precepts plug into the Eightfold Path. And he gives you much more illuminating details about what these things mean. Right here, he's giving you a summary of what he's talking about. But in the 5 precepts, he goes into detail. Because one of the things that people might say is, well, what is sexual misconduct, right? What does that mean? Well, in the 5 precepts, he's going to give you details about this. He talks about things like having sex with minors, having sex without consent, going outside of your relationships, things like this, like raping people, things like this. You'll see that in his teachings. It's important to understand that the Buddha never talks about same-gender relationships as sexual misconduct, because some places you hear people talking about those kinds of things. But the Buddha understood that same-gender relationships isn't causing harm. If you have two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other, who are they causing harm to? Right? They're choosing to have sex with each other. If it's a male and a female, or a male and a male and a female, they're not causing harm to anyone. They're two loyal, loving, consenting adults. The Buddha's teachings are all about not causing harm to others, right? And two loyal, loving, consenting adults that are choosing to have sex, they're not causing harm to anyone. So the Buddha understood this 2,500 years ago. He understood that same-gender relationships aren't causing harm. This is how wise he was and how awake he was. Today, we have many people in the world that don't understand this. More and more people are starting to understand it, but he already understood it 2,500 years ago. So you can see this as how wise he actually was during his lifetime. So we're going to talk about this more and explore it more. I'm going to give you more details tomorrow about all of these. But understand that what the Buddha is doing here, he's just giving you three really big, impactful things. He's not giving you an exhaustive list. Notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Well, if you understand right action and what he's teaching you, which is don't cause harm through your bodily actions, then you know it's unwise to walk up to someone and punch them in the face. He's just giving you three really impactful ones, and then you're going to have to figure out all the others as you go through your day-to-day life, ensuring that you're not causing harm with your bodily actions. Notice he doesn't say, don't drag your suitcase through the aisle of an airplane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees. Well, airplanes didn't even exist during his lifetime because the world has changed, right? So if you understand what right action is to not cause harm through your bodily movements and your actions, then you can apply this to any number of different things. So you're going to need to be able to see that for yourself, because the Buddha wouldn't have been able to give you an exhaustive list of every single bodily action that you could potentially cause harm with. He does give a few, though, beyond this in some of his other teachings, where he talks about like taking substances that cause heedlessness. This would be an activity, a bodily action that will cause harm to this being, who you are. Or like gambling. This is a bodily action that's coming from craving, desire, attachment. And this would cause harm within your own life. So there's others that he does give, but these three are the three major ones that he talks about, and then you're going to need to see all the other ones for yourself because you're not interested in causing harm to others. Then we can talk about livelihood. What a livelihood is the way that you choose to sustain your life in the world. If you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to others, that harm is going to come back to you. So in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha says, "And what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood." So here he's just giving a very general, very broad statement. But if you go look in his other teachings, there's teachings that plug into the Eightfold Path. Just like I've been mentioning, there's this core central teaching that others plug into. So he talks about livelihoods that would cause harm. And what I'm going to teach you here is what's called the first fold of purification. There's another fold of purification. So he talks about these 5 livelihoods that would cause harm if you choose to actually do any of these. Business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. These are all things that are meant to harm other beings. And if you practiced any of these to sustain your life, this harm is going to come back to you. So again, you're not interested in believing any of this stuff. So I'm going to take one of these and show you how to reflect, and then you can do the others if you like. So let's just take this one of substances that cause heedlessness. If I was standing on the street corner selling crystal methamphetamine and heroin and cocaine and things like this into the community, I'm causing harm, because now these individuals are getting addicted to these substances. They're going out and murdering perhaps, and robbing and stealing. They might be raping people to get money, or who knows what else they might be doing in order to give me money. And now standing on the street corner selling those substances, I'm very likely to get beat up. I'm very likely to get murdered. I might get robbed myself. I might go to jail for this, or I might even get addicted to these substances. This is the results of my decisions. My decisions, based on the natural law of karma, to stand there on the street corner and cause harm by selling substances that cause heedlessness, are going to produce harm within my own life. This is the cause and effect relationship of decisions that you make that lead to a certain result. But remember, this is the natural law of karma. This isn't the human law. The natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than any kind of human laws. The human laws in your country, they might tell you, hey, you can go work at that liquor store. You can go be a cashier over there. We're not going to arrest you for that, right? That's a human law. Human laws are imperfect. The natural law of karma is they're showing you all the time what would be wise or what would be unwise. Because if you worked in a liquor store, for example, you're very likely to also get beat up, to get murdered potentially. You can get robbed in that situation because people are coming in there to be able to steal. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele from time to time. And how could you get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life if you're having to deal with intoxicated people from time to time in your livelihood? So you would like to get to the point where you're not practicing one of these 5 livelihoods, and you'll be able to look at the things that you're doing in life to determine that for yourself. And where you need help, you're always welcome to reach out to me and I'll help you to be able to see this. Then the Buddha gives you guidance as part of this first fold of purification of how to perform your livelihood so that you can get to the point where you're having nothing but success in your livelihood. He talks about scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. So if I was, say, a politician, it's not one of those 5 livelihoods. I'm not causing harm by choosing to be the mayor of a city or to be a legislator or a lawmaker. I'm not causing anybody any harm. But if I was corrupt and I was scheming on the side, now I'm causing difficulties, right, in the community through my actions and the way that I'm conducting myself. And now, say 10 or 15 years into my career, people find out that I'm corrupt and they won't actually reelect me. Right? So you would like to make sure you're not scheming within your livelihood. Then there's flattery. Flattery is like giving insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever gone into a store and when you walked in, they were like, oh, that shirt looks really nice on you. That really brings out the colors of your eyes. You know, I've got these perfect earrings that'll go with that shirt. Come on over here. Let me show you these earrings, right? They're just trying to flatter you in order to be able to get you to buy something. So the Buddha teaches you not to do that, that it's unwise. Because if you ever went into that kind of environment and experienced that, you were probably turned off by it and you probably weren't even interested in going into the store. It was like, I'm not even interested, right? So if you're going to build a really healthy livelihood for yourself where you can thrive, you're going to need to make sure you're not just flattering your business partners or your customers or people like this. Then there's hinting. What hinting is where you're not clear and concise about the things that you're doing in your livelihood. Like say all of us were on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss about what it is that we're doing. We would like to be clear and concise and precise about what it is that we're doing. Whereas if we're just hinting, kind of beating around the bush, so to speak, we're not going to be able to have as much success in our livelihood as if we're very clear and concise and precise in the way that we're conducting our livelihood and communicating in our livelihood. What belittling is where you're degrading and disparaging other people in your livelihood, like your coworkers, your business partners, or even your competition. Sometimes we think that in business, if we degrade our competition, that will make us look better, and that somehow we're going to come out looking better, and we're going to be able to do better in our livelihood. But people can see through that, and they don't like it when you're belittling other people, even your competition. So if somebody asks you about your competition, you can just easily say, I'm not quite sure what they do, but here's what I can do for you, right? And now you just speak about what you can do rather than degrading or disparaging what somebody else is doing, okay? What pursuing gain with gain is where you're just taking a livelihood based on wanting money, and that's all you care about is the money in this livelihood. Like if you've ever had a job where all you cared about is the paycheck and you didn't really care about the product or service that you were doing, you probably felt miserable going to work each day. You probably dragged yourself to work each day. You were unenthusiastic. You probably didn't have ambition and motivation and encouragement in that particular livelihood. So the Buddha would like to help you and guide you to see that in order for you to enjoy your life and your livelihood, you're going to need to do it for something more than money. right? It's not just the money that should motivate you in a particular livelihood. And you're going to potentially need to transition your life towards those kinds of things. So if you were just chasing after money, eventually that craving is going to be extinguished, and you're going to feel like, this is pointless, right? You're going to be dragging yourself to work each day. So the Buddha teaches you that in order to get to this peace and this joy, you're going to need to enjoy the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. If you go around here to Thailand, you're going to see people who really thoroughly enjoy the work that they're doing. You can go over there on the street corner, and there's probably someone selling mango and sticky rice, and they just feel so great slicing up those mangoes and serving that sticky rice and handing it to you with a smile. And they feel so wonderful to collect their 40 baht just to give you that mango and sticky rice, right? So the Buddha is teaching you how to have enthusiasm and motivation and encouragement in the work that you do. So what you're going to need to do, if you're still working, is to find your mango and sticky rice. What is your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you're going to be motivated to do each and every day with a smile? And even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it because you enjoy it that much. But of course, you're going to need to get paid for the things that you're doing because you need to sustain your life. So there's a second fold of purification here. This is the first fold, understanding that it would be unwise to practice any of these 5 livelihoods and performing your livelihood without any of these things. But in order to really truly get to a right livelihood, you're going to need to get to the second fold of purification. So if you're looking for more details about a livelihood, like maybe you're unemployed right now, or maybe you're moving from one job to the other, you would like to look at volume 12, chapter 14. This is where you're going to see more details on right livelihood to be able to help you, where the Buddha explains the first fold and he explains the second fold as well. But just to get you started, this is the first fold of purification that you would like to work towards. And this is going to help you get to a more enthusiastic, more ambition, more motivation in your day-to-day life about how you sustain your life. So just summarizing the moral conduct section, there's right speech, where you're choosing to not cause harm through any of your verbal conduct, but making sure that you pay attention to not only your verbal communication, but your text messages, your chats, your posts, your emails, all of those things need to be with those factors of right speech and the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, ensuring that you're harmless in the way that you're communicating. Then there's right action, which is choosing not to cause harm through your bodily actions, your bodily conduct, ensuring that you're not harming others through the way you interact in the world with your body. Then there's right livelihood, choosing to not cause harm through the way that you sustain your life, and finding that livelihood where you have enthusiasm, ambition, and motivation and encouragement in your day-to-day life, that you shouldn't be causing harm through the way that you sustain your life and acquire income. Do you guys have any questions on the moral conduct section?
Let's start with right speech. Truth. Would it be considered lying or deception? Let's say if I put onto a resume that I have done landscaping work when all I've done is mowed lawns. Now it's not untrue, but it's also not the full truth. Does that make sense? Would that be considered lying, deception?
In my opinion, you can describe cutting grass as landscaping because that is landscaping, right? We'd have to look at the definition of what landscaping is, but I can see where somebody might describe it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then...
But so what you would like to do is you would like to share the full truth. So if you were in an interview and somebody said, "Oh, I see that you do landscaping and you have done landscaping. Can you describe that to me?" You would say, "Oh, I used to mow lawns." "Oh, okay, I see." Right? But you wouldn't say like, "Oh, I was designing the landscape and I was building berms and putting in plants and selecting species from tropical environments," when in reality you were just mowing the lawn. So that would be the lying part.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this would be under forget what the exact term was, but the needless chatter.
Okay, frivolous speech.
Frivolous speech. There we go. So, and I'm not sure that it falls under this, but that's sort of where I categorize it right now in my mind. My son would do what I would describe as like an info dump. He has all this information, and he talks and talks and talks about a particular subject or a particular topic for an extended period of time with no interruptions, doesn't want to be interrupted. And I want to try to help him turn it into more of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because it's very taxing on the person listening, and eventually they, can't help but tune out. And then, he will get frustrated because they weren't listening, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how would I go about, like, without like just interrupting him and causing negative, guide him into more conversational strategy, I guess.
Is this your 6-year-old?
This is my 10-year-old.
Your 10-year-old. Okay. So after he does his brain dump, right, just let him do it because he has a craving to talk. Let him get it all out. And then afterwards you say, son, I'm just curious. Have you ever thought about how having a conversation is actually much better for you rather than just kind of like broadcasting all the things that are in your mind? Have you ever thought about kind of like being a little bit more reserved in the way that you talk and just kind of say bits and pieces and then create a space for somebody else to talk? And then after they talk, you share a little bit more. This way you can have a conversation with someone. Have you ever thought about this kind of thing? And then you have a conversation with him that way. That way you're not putting your expectations on him or trying to control him. You just say, have you ever thought about this? And he's probably going to say, no, I never thought about that, Dad. Or, yeah, I've thought about that and I just like to talk like this. Well, yeah, I'm sure you probably have a certain amount of enjoyment and excitement when you're talking this way. But this is coming from your craving, from your desire. You can teach them these same kind of things. This is your longing, your yearning and wanting to say things a certain way. But what you're going to notice, because you'd always like to show them the cause and effect, what you're going to notice is when you talk about when you talk in this way, people are going to tune you out. They're going to be disinterested. In fact, even me, as much as I love you, when I hear you talking like this, sometimes I'm not even interested in paying attention, where you will be much more successful in life with your friends and your teachers and eventually your bosses and people like this, if you're able to communicate and leave space for a conversation. And then having him understand that intellectually is one thing, but then you're going to need to kind of help him with that going forward, because he's going to learn it intellectually, but then it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress for him to implement it. So once you have this intellectual sync up with him, which will probably take you 15, 20 minutes to help him understand it, then as you see him having frivolous speech, you're going to, in that initial conversation, you might even say to him, son, would it be okay for you as I see you have frivolous speech, can I bring that to your attention so that you can maybe address it and learn how to do things better? And he'll say, yeah, Dad, that sounds great. Right. And what he's going to see when he eliminates his frivolous speech is he's going to see his mind is calming down, and he's going to see that he has better relationships with people. And this is going to actually help you have a better relationship with him, because he's going to see like Dad is helping me to cultivate wisdom, and it's improving the way my mind functions and the way I interact with others. And then he's going to be more and more open to you helping him with other aspects of his life too. Sounds like your mic got turned off.
My last question about right speech would be, how do I recognize my own harsh speech? Because I found it very difficult, especially with certain people that are close to me, to recognize that I'm having harsh speech in my brain. It's like, well, this is how I talk, but...
This is where the mental discipline section is going to come in, that your mindfulness is going to help you with that. So you need to develop the mindfulness. So I'll explain it in the mental discipline section. Other questions from you guys?
Slides that said careers to avoid. One was, I think, weapons. Another one said meat. I don't know what meat means as a career.
Sure, meat is like selling animal flesh for others. So selling beef or pork or chicken and things like this, because this means that there was an animal that needed to die and be killed in order for you to now sell this meat to other people. And now when other people are purchasing this meat and ingesting it, it's causing difficulties within their own body. So if you were selling meat, this would be unwise because it's having to cause harm in order for you to sustain your life.
So are Buddhists vegetarians?
So there's no like rule for everybody to do everything a certain way. Everybody's in their own journey to enlightenment. It's your own independent journey, where a teacher is like a tour guide pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and grow and develop. If you look at the teachings of the Buddha, you can see very clearly that you would be wise to eat plant-based food, but that's not to say everybody is vegan, because everybody's at a different point in their practice. In fact, here in Thailand, one of the big misunderstandings that they have is they think that it's the person who killed the animal that is experiencing the unwholesome results or the unwholesome karma. And that's why you see so much meat here in Thailand. But in reality, it's like you can't steal a car, give it to somebody else, and now that person isn't going to experience anything. If that person's driving the stolen car, they're going to get arrested. It's the same thing that if you choose to eat meat, it's going to cause sickness and illness within your own body, because you're now ingesting the drugs and the hormones and the toxins and things like this. So it's not just the person who killed the animal that is experiencing the unwholesome results, it's the person who's ingesting it as well. So that's why the Buddha teaches us not to have a livelihood that is based on meat, but then also ultimately what you might decide to do. This is your choice. It's your practice. No one's ever going to try to convince you to do this or force you to do this, but you might decide on your own, seeing this cause and effect relationship between eating meat and the sickness and illness in the body. You might decide to switch to a plant-based food supply. But whether you do that or if you do that, your choice, right? It's when or if you do it, it's your choice. It's your life and it's your practice. Mm-hmm.
Can you again provide a definition of heedlessness?
Heedlessness?
Yeah.
Yeah. Heedlessness is unattentiveness, unalertness, unawareness of mind, where the mind is, unaware of what's going on within one's own mind. So heedlessness is a lack of attention, a lack of alertness, a lack of awareness of mind. That's heedlessness.
Examples of like businesses or whatever that might be out there that are dealing with substances that cause heedlessness, apart from
Sure.
alcohol places.
So alcohol and illicit drugs is an easy one. You can see that. But even things like caffeine, if you're selling caffeine, because caffeine is also producing heedlessness in the mind. Nowadays, there's even synthetic drugs and things like this. But anytime that you're selling something for the purpose of heedlessness. So if I were to say sell prescription drugs and my sole purpose was to help people get high, then that would be heedlessness. But prescription drugs can also be sold with the intention to help and heal as well. So it's all about your intention and what you're choosing to do in terms of the way you practice this. Because there can be a pharmacist who's purely interested in helping someone to get access to prescription medications, but there can also be someone who's selling that on the street as a way to get heedless too. So the object's exactly the same, but the intention behind it is different. And you're going to experience different results because of the intention that you're putting behind it. There always needs to be intention behind any particular action in order for there to be results behind it. So you can look through the world, the way that the Buddha teaches is he teaches in a timeless way because he knows that the world's going to be constantly changing. So he intentionally used this word heedlessness so that we can relate it to any number of things that come about in the future. So like, he could have never envisioned like LSD and PCP because that's chemical based, and that stuff didn't exist during his lifetime. Now we have those, magic mushrooms and ayahuasca and all these other things that people are taking for psychedelics and stuff like this. He could have never envisioned some of these things, so he used that term heedlessness intentionally, because what you're going to see in the mental discipline section is, in order to get to enlightenment, you need to cultivate mindfulness and awareness of mind. So if you're ingesting a substance that is producing heedlessness, a lack of awareness of mind, now you're actually promoting just the opposite. And if you're sustaining your life on that, then you're basically causing harm in the community.
So, so from what I understood from what you just said, you can have a livelihood based on the intention of healing, with, like, say, for example, pharmaceutical.
Your mic went out. Yeah.
Yeah, for example. Now, where I live, there's people working with medicines that they have the intention to use them to heal, but they also produce this. Yeah.
It's not just purely the intention that matters. You got to look at what's actually truly happening too. So what I'm saying is there needs to be an action with an intention behind it, right? So if somebody is using ayahuasca and they call it medicine, and they think that they're helping people with whatever situation, trauma, or what have you, even though their intention is to heal on a level that we can see very clearly, is the psychedelic substance is not producing mindfulness or awareness of mind for this person to really truly get to actual healing, because they're not developing the introspection and the development of their own mind. They're relying on the substance for this. So they might have the intention to heal, but still, because of their lack of wisdom of the substance that they're using, then they're experiencing these unwholesome results because they're causing harm. Because now these individuals that are having these psychedelics, they can only be introspective during that period of time. These people are getting hooked or addicted to this kind of thing, and now they're not actually cultivating their mind in a way that's going to produce real, ultimate, true healing, which is training your mind to have mindfulness and all these other qualities. So there needs to be these two things together. It's not just purely the intention that someone has.
Yeah, and like also with pharmaceutical like substances, they can also produce heedless.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
But they could be used for heedlessness, but it depends on the intention, right? So like you could take a painkiller that is used for a certain pain, but then if it's abused, it could be used for heedlessness. So it comes down to an individual's decision. It's not just about what this particular thing does or doesn't do. So like we'll talk about this tomorrow with the 5 precepts that we're going to talk about, like things like marijuana and psychedelics. I'm going to go in this a lot of detail tomorrow.
So one more question with livelihood, right? Is that then the responsibility of the person buying the whatever they're buying, or like the responsibility of the person like consuming it?
When it comes to your livelihood, it's your choice of how you choose to sustain your life. Then when it comes to right action, it comes to that person. If they're choosing to purchase drugs or alcohol or something like this, it's that person's choice. So in this situation, both of them are making unwise choices, but this person is sustaining their life off of a livelihood that is causing harm. This person's choosing an action that is causing harm to themselves. So in that situation, they're both experiencing the results of their unwise decisions, but the livelihood itself is based on your decisions, not what other people are choosing.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, the entire path to enlightenment is all about your decisions. It's not about what other people are deciding.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Hugo, you have a question? Sounds like your mic's not on yet.
Me understand if there's any compensations in there. Let's say that in the past life, I was an arsonist, and through my own livelihood, my own moral conduct, I improve my delivery in this world, and I do a lot of good. I was born, just pointed to be burned the way that I burned people in the past life. Is there a law of compensation in there in which you do something that is not necessarily morally correct, and then you go on doing good things, and then that diminish the karmatic responsibility, if you like?
Anything that you choose to do, either wisely or unwisely, it's going to produce gamma, either wholesome or unwholesome, and you will experience the results of that. You can't negate it or cancel it out. Anything that you've decided to do that is unwise, you're going to experience the results of it. You'll see this on Thursday when we go in and talk about the natural law of gamma in detail. I'm going to explain this to you, show you the words of the Buddha, and help you to independently verify it for yourself, and show you how to extinguish your unwholesome gamma. Because as you make your way to enlightenment, you are going to experience unwholesome gamma coming back to you, and you need to extinguish it. But it's not like you can't not experience that. You will experience it. But now that it's coming back to you, there are things that you can do to extinguish it. And that's what you would ultimately like to do. And that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment.
Okay, and the second question on related prior slides is that I understand that the self doesn't exist. When we talk about my feelings, my thoughts, my emotions, who is the I that says mine?
There is no I there. What's happening is the mind is experiencing these things. So it's really not I am angry. It's the mind is experiencing anger. It's not that I am hungry. It's that the body needs food. That's true reality. But because of the mind's lack of wisdom and that personal existence view, we will say, I am hungry, I am thirsty. And this is just reinforcing that personal existence view, where in your mind, there needs to be a disassociation with that I, and get to the point where you can see it as the body needs food, the body needs water. Instead of I have a headache, the head hurts. Right? That's really what's truly happening. But because of our lack of wisdom, and we think that there is a self in the unenlightened state, we will speak in ways that doesn't really truly represent true reality. But more and more, when you see true reality, you'll think differently, and you'll probably end up speaking a bit differently than you do now as well.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so now let's go into the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, because we've just talked about the wisdom section, which is the foundation, and then we discussed the moral conduct section, which is if you improve your moral conduct, then you'll experience different results in the way that you interact with other beings, and people will interact with you differently. But you're not going to be able to implement this moral conduct section without the mental discipline section. That's what Jake was asking about. Like, how do I stop talking to my children in this particular way, right? Or how do I not get angry in this situation? Because I know it's the craving, desire, attachment that's causing it, but how do I stop that from occurring? So the moral conduct is an important part of that, but you wouldn't actually be able to implement the moral conduct without the mental discipline. So all these 8 factors are actually working together. You're not mastering one before you move on to the next. It's those 8 individual dials that you're tweaking in and getting a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. You get a better quality sound, or a better quality performing mind as you tweak these in more and more. So your mental discipline is now going to help you with the moral conduct so that you can improve the way you interact in the world with others and improve what you experience coming back to you. So here, this is the 6th step of the Eightfold Path. These are the words of the Buddha. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to teach it to you. He says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So he's talking about 4 things here that you're going to need to apply effort to be able to do. You're going to need to prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. You're going to need to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. You're going to need to produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. And you're going to need to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind, bring them to full perfection and full development. So let me give you some examples here to help you understand what this is. And these are just examples. What are unwholesome that's currently in your mind, or what is wholesome that's currently in your mind? That's going to be unique to you. But these are just examples to help you understand right effort. So for example, this first one, preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. Right now, there are certain things that are not currently in your mind that are unwholesome. You're going to need to apply the effort to prevent those from coming into the mind. Right now, probably one of the farthest things from your mind is the idea of killing another human being. That's probably not even remotely in your mind right now. And what the Buddha is saying is anything like this that is not currently in your mind, you're going to need to prevent that from ever coming into your mind. Because if you allow an unwholesome mental state to come into your mind, you might actually act upon it. So you would like to prevent it from coming into the mind. And those unwholesome things are going to be unique to you. Then there's certain unwholesome things that are currently in your mind that you're going to need to abandon. So for example, let's just say you're in an existing relationship and you have a craving to go outside that relationship and have sex. You know that that's going to cause harm. So if you see that unwholesome quality coming up in your mind, you're going to need to apply right effort to eliminate that out of your mind and abandon that out of your mind. Or let's just say you get angry or irritated or frustrated. You're noticing that coming up in your mind. That's an unwholesome quality. You're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. Then there's certain wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind that you're going to need to bring into your mind. So for example, you're going to learn about generosity on this path. Generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. And this is going to help train your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Because with craving, desire, attachment, you tend to be selfish and you tend to hold on to things really tightly. But when you practice generosity, you're living open-handedly and you're sharing with other people so that this will help train your mind to let go. So if you notice that you find it hard to share with other people, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this generosity into your day-to-day life, where now you can practice generosity. Or say compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. The opposite of this would be indifference. Like when you see somebody struggling or having difficulties in life, you're just like, so what? It's not me. It's not one of my family members. I don't care, right? That would be the opposite of compassion. If you notice that that's the case in your mind, then you're going to need to bring in this wholesome quality of compassion. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. It's not going to just happen automatically. You're going to need to apply effort to bring it in. Then there are certain wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind, but they haven't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. And where you see that, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring those in. So for example, say loving kindness. You're probably loving and kind to a certain extent in certain relationships. But then in other situations, you're not very loving and kind. Maybe you're angry and you're bitter and you're harsh and hostile. That's because loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth, full development, and full perfection. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you can be loving and kind with everybody in the world, right? There's not anybody that you will even dislike by the time that you get to enlightenment. You have love and kindness towards every single being in the world. But where you see that your mind's loving and kind, but then in other situations it's not, you're going to need to apply the effort to be loving and kind in these situations. So you're going to need to apply the effort to support and encourage and bring to full growth and full perfection this loving kindness. Or say something like sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So this is the opposite of jealousy and envy. And maybe you have sympathetic joy in certain situations. Maybe somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand and I was going to book those tickets tonight to go to Thailand. And you're like, that's wonderful. You're going to have a great time in Thailand. I was there. They have great massages, great mango and sticky rice. You're going to have a great time. This is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is sympathetic joy. But now let's just say you're at work and you apply for a promotion, a new job, a new title, a new salary, and one of your coworkers do too. And let's just say they get the job instead of you. And now they come by your desk and they're gloating and they're all conceited and puffed up and arrogant about them getting the job and you're not, right? You might find that it's very difficult to have sympathetic joy for that person. You might be jealous and you might be envious. You're going to need to be able to arise this wholesome quality because you've already got the sympathetic joy in there to a certain degree, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full development and full perfection because in certain situations, you have struggles and difficulties and there's some certain jealousy or envy in there. So you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind, to abandon the unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind, to bring in the wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind, and then the wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind, you're going to need to support those, encourage those, and don't allow them to fade. And this is going to come from your right effort, the effort to do this. Then there's right mindfulness. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness. This is the thing that's going to allow you to see what are the wholesome things and what are the unwholesome things. So I'm going to read this to you and then I'll teach it to you. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So he's talking about 4 things here, and they're referred to as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But first, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. What mindfulness in general means is awareness of mind. You're going to need to cultivate awareness of your mind. Right now, you might just be going through life, not really paying attention to your thoughts and your ideas, your mental states and the feelings that you're having and these kinds of things. You might not be aware of those things. So you're going to need to develop some awareness of mind where you're aware of these things that are going on within your own mind. And that might be where you hang out for a few months. Right? So this way you can cultivate the mindfulness. Now, one of the challenges is that this word has made its way into modern language and people use this word mindful, but they oftentimes don't use it in the same way that the Buddha used it. What they might say is, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? They're not really saying what the Buddha is talking about here. They're basically replacing the word careful with mindful. And that's not what mindful means. It doesn't mean careful. It means awareness of your mind. So whether other people use that word in that way or not, it's up to them. It's their life. But if you're interested in getting to enlightenment, you're going to need to know the way that the Buddha uses this term and start to associate with it in that way, because that's what's going to help you to come to the full understanding of what the Buddha is teaching you here. So this means awareness of mind. Okay? But then once you develop that, you would like to get into the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you develop awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What we're talking about here is kind of 4 stages that your discontentedness goes through as you're experiencing craving, desire, attachment. When you have contact through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, the body, and the mind itself, because of your cravings, desires, attachments, you're going to see that as either agreeable or you're going to see it as disagreeable. And there's going to be either a conditioned pleasant feeling or a painful feeling or a feeling neither painful nor pleasant that's going to start to arise. And when it starts to arise, it's going to start out as a bodily sensation. This is like an early warning system alerting you that your mind is about to become discontent. With something like anger, you might notice tingling in the body. You might notice tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is an early warning system alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You're about to get annoyed. And that's an opportunity for you to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation before it's become a feeling. This is preventing. This is applying the right effort to prevent this unwholesome quality from coming into the mind. Something like shyness. We talk about it as butterflies in the stomach. We're talking about queasiness. We're talking about the bodily sensations associated with conditioned feelings that are arising or potentially about to arise in the mind. So you would like to take action at the bodily sensations, applying right effort to cut off and let go of any arising discontentedness. Because your mind's telling you, hey, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Okay, so you're cutting off and letting go, applying right effort at the bodily sensations. You're not suppressing your feelings. Sometimes when I describe this, people think that you're suppressing your feelings. That's not what you're doing. You're actually cutting it off before it even becomes a feeling, when it's just a bodily sensation. You're essentially rewiring the mind so that it no longer forms its inner feelings based on some object or some condition. Because as you're doing this and you're training your mind, if you can get to the point where you cut off and let go every single time at the bodily sensations, you're really close to enlightenment. You're like a year, maybe 3 years away from getting to enlightenment, because you're able to notice the bodily sensations associated with discontentedness arising every single time, and you're cutting off and letting go every single time. You're very close to enlightenment. Essentially, what we're talking about here is like if you were taking a boat from like Canada to the UK and you're out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you got a real problem to deal with. You got to get rid of this water out of the boat. So if you can prevent it from ever coming into the boat, hey, you can sail from Canada straight to the UK, right? But if you allow the water to come in, you've got a problem to deal with. So the same thing is if you allow the anger to come in, now you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get rid of it. So if you can catch it as a bodily sensation, remembering it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress for you to be able to do this, eventually you'll be able to completely transform your mind. But between now and enlightenment, you aren't going to be able to catch it every single time. It is going to become a feeling sometimes. It's going to move to this second part where you're going to notice the mind is angry, the mind is frustrated, the mind is agitated, right? And you can cut it off and let it go there too. It's more challenging, but you can cut it off and let it go there too. Then if you don't cut it off as a feeling, it's going to move to the next part, which is it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been grumpy or irritated for a couple of days or maybe a week or two? Of course you have, right? Because you didn't have wisdom of this. And you had that bodily sensation, blew right past it. It became a feeling. You didn't understand what you needed to be doing there. You're maybe blaming other people for the feelings that you were experiencing. Now it affected the condition of your mind for a few hours, for a few days, maybe a week or so, right? And now the condition of your mind is like grumpy and irritable and agitated. And then if you don't cut it off and let it go there, it's going to feed what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. And in this example, it's ill will. You have a deeply rooted container of ill will in your mind. Right now, it hasn't arisen. You might just be sitting here listening to me talk, and you don't have any anger or hatred or anything that's in your mind at this moment. But you have this deeply rooted container that if somebody does something that you disagree with, that anger can arise because you have this deeply rooted container of ill will. So those 10 fetters that we were talking about yesterday, those are all mental objects, right? Those are deeply rooted containers in the mind. For example, we weren't born with ill will. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? We didn't have that. But our mind developed it over time because as we had our cravings, desires, attachments, as we were growing up, there was bodily sensations, it moved to a feeling, it affected the condition of our mind, and more we formed these mental objects. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to put a blockade at the bodily sensations and stop the mind forming these conditioned feelings. All the while, you're learning and practicing his teachings to purify the mind of these mental objects and get them out of the mind so that now you can have more and more of a purification of your mind. So the mindfulness or awareness of mind is teaching you to cut off and let go at the bodily sensations, not allowing the mind to form a conditioned feeling, because then if you do, your mind's going to stay wired that way, and it's going to continue to form its feelings based on these things, these objects. But if you miss it as a bodily sensation, because you will, cut it off as a feeling. And if you can't cut it off there, cut it off as a condition of the mind so that it doesn't feed these mental objects. The way that this looks in your day-to-day life is, let's just say I'm sitting on the sofa and I'm watching the news. And now when you hear the news, you're noticing this frustration coming up in the mind. It starts as a bodily sensation. There's this tingling, this tightening in the chest, this uncomfortableness in the body. Rather than just sit there and dwell in that and keep watching the news, redirect the mind, apply right effort, cut off the news, get up and go outside for a walk, go for a bike ride, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, get a glass of water from the kitchen, right? No need to sit there and dwell in that. So you can apply right effort. When you see your mind with your mindfulness about to get frustrated, redirect your mind towards something else, and that will cut it off and let it go. Over time, you'll be able to internally cut this off within the mind. But as you're just getting started like this, you're going to need to physically redirect the mind towards something else. And this will help you to cut it off and let it go. Okay, so this is the 4 foundations of mindfulness and mindfulness in general. And now you wouldn't be able to practice mindfulness without right concentration. So these mental discipline section is all working together, as are all the others. So here in the Eightfold Path under right concentration, the Buddha is explaining to you the results. If you practice the Eightfold Path in its entirety, that ultimately you will get to a point where you're experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind. They're referred to as the jhanas. There are 4 individual phases that your mind goes through that you will experience these enhanced qualities on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. I'm not going to read you this. You will need to learn these later, and I have other courses and retreats where I teach these to you. But here, this is describing the results of the Eightfold Path. Where he describes how to practice right concentration is in other parts of his teachings. So now I'm going to teach you how to practice right concentration so that you can experience some of these benefits. So the way that you practice right concentration is you develop a daily meditation practice and you practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life. The daily meditation practice is to develop breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. These are the first 2 that you need to learn. And because this is a foundational class, I'm teaching you the breathing mindfulness meditation. And I'm going to teach you that this afternoon. Even though we've been doing it in the course, I'm going to teach it to you this afternoon. So if you can build up your meditation practice gradually to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more, you're going to gradually make your way to enlightenment with this type of practice, right? but you're not going to be able to start there. Oftentimes it takes 6 months, even a year or 2 years to build up to this kind of practice, because this can sound like a lot. 2 to 3 times for 30 minutes or more. This is like an extra hour and a half in your day. And if you've got 3 kids, that's like, whoa, where's that time going to come from? So you're going to need to kind of peel some things away that you're potentially doing right now that aren't beneficial in your life in order to make more space for these kinds of things in your life. So if you start out with 5 or 10 minutes a session, start out there and do that. If you start out with 15 or 20 minutes, start there and do that, and then gradually expand. What you're going to notice is frequency is more important than duration. So if it's a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15 minutes, go for the 2 for 15. That's going to be much more beneficial for you. And then just expand those 15 minutes to be longer and longer over the course of your day. So you can get to the point where you're meditating 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. But understand that this is going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress as well. If you think about your meditation practice, right? If you did 2 or 3 sessions per day, let's just say 2, that's 60 meditations in a month. Well, if you get 52 or 53 or 54 meditations in your month, you're making your way to enlightenment. So you don't need to feel guilty or shameful about missing 1 or 2 or 3 meditations here and there throughout your month. Just gradually keep working towards the development of this. That it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And there's other specialized meditations as well. There's 2 of them that I teach at different times. I'll show you guys this afternoon when I teach you the breathing mindfulness meditation. I have the words of the Buddha where he shows you the 4 types of meditations that he taught. These are the only 4 that he actually taught. So developing a meditation practice is going to help you to develop concentration, and it's going to help you to develop that mindfulness or awareness of mind so that then you can apply right effort to cut off and let go. Then there's a practice of singleness of mind in day-to-day life. What this is just doing one thing at a time, where what you might have been taught is multitasking. In the 1960s, when computers came out, human beings started to think that we are computers and that we can do multiple things at one time, but the mind can't actually do more than one thing at a time. What you're actually doing is you're doing one thing for like 3, 4, 5, 8 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else, and you're doing that for 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else. You're not actually doing all of these things at one time. And if your mind's bouncing around like this all day long, particularly at like work or something like this for 8 or 10 hours, when you get off work, you'll probably find it very hard to relax. You probably notice that your mind's churning with anxiety and stress and things like this. And this is because it's like a racehorse. If you race a horse around a track constantly, when it goes to the barn, it can't calm down. It's all hyped up from racing around the track, right? So you would like to get to the point where you're just doing one thing at a time, single-threadedly, handling that really well, and then moving off to the next thing. Because if you're going to bring forth your wisdom of things like right speech and right action, you're not going to be able to do that if your mind's bouncing around. So if you're talking on the phone, watching TV, and maybe eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all these things at one time. Your mind's rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing. And now this phone call that could have been probably 10 or 15 minutes, it ended up being 45 minutes or an hour. And as you were talking to this person, you might have said things that you regret. You didn't have your full wisdom to help you. Or maybe you even agreed to doing certain things that when you get off the phone, you totally forgot what those things are. Right? And now you got to spend more time to go back and clean all that up. You got to apologize to mom. Mom, I'm so sorry. I said that. I didn't mean to say that. By the way, what is it that you wanted me to do again? I totally forgot. Right? So the mind thinks that you're being more productive by doing the talking on the phone, the TV, and the sandwich. But in reality, the true reality of it is that you're actually making things worse. So you would like to just do one thing at a time. The way that you can think about this is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding this back and forth, initially your steel rod's going to bounce around because there's no groove there yet. Your mind's not going to be focused. But if you grind that steel rod back enough, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove in this wood. And eventually it'll stay in that groove for longer and longer periods of time. And when it does pop out, you're going to notice it and you're going to be able to bring it right back. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, eventually your groove is so deep, it'll never pop out because it's too deep. The same thing with your mind. If you practice singleness of mind, eventually your groove is so deep that your mind won't pop out from this groove. So the way that this looks in your day-to-day life is, say you're washing the dishes and your mind's thinking about something else, you would like to cut that off and bring your mind back to washing the dishes. Because if you're washing dishes and thinking about something else, next thing you know, the knife has cut your hand and now you're experiencing this unwholesome karma. Or say you're walking down the street talking on a mobile phone, you're walking down the street and talking on the mobile phone, well, whack. There's been people that have been killed. They're no longer with us today because they didn't understand practicing singleness of mind. Right? They were walking down the street and they were talking on their phone. Your mind can't do both of those things at one time. So if you're in a class like this and you're thinking about lunch, you're looking at the clock and you're like, whoa, I'm getting a little bit hungry. It's time to go to lunch. You like to cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to the focus. Or if you're in a business meeting and you're thinking about going to Thailand and you just can't wait to get to Thailand, you like to cut that off and let it go. Focus on the work. Because if you allow your mind to wander and think about Thailand, you're not applying yourself in work and you're not getting the results that you need there. So you like to just do one thing at a time. And the more that you do this, your mind will just stay there, focused all the time. So this is how you practice right concentration, is with your meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. So now just a little bit of a summary of this is right effort is taking the initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. You need to apply the effort to do this. Then right mindfulness is having awareness of the mind and the four foundations of mindfulness, understanding and being aware of those bodily sensations associated with craving, desire, attachment, with discontentedness arising, not just an itch or a scratch here or there. That's not what the Buddha is talking about. He's talking about those tingling sensations that are occurring before conditioned feelings. Then the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. You might need to hang out with just awareness of mind for a while and practice that. But then ultimately you'd like to develop the four foundations of mindfulness. Then there's right concentration, where you're developing your meditation practice and you're developing singleness of mind. You're just doing one thing at a time in your day-to-day life. And you'll actually be more productive when you're doing this. Ultimately, you're going to start experiencing the jhanas, which are these four enhanced qualities of mind, these four phases that you go through as you're making your way to the first stage of enlightenment. And you're going to be developing your practice of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. So, any questions on the mental discipline section? Now that you guys have heard everything, if you would like to re-ask any questions that I haven't answered, you're more than welcome to.
Yes. So, I just want to understand which stage of mindfulness this sort of happened in. So, it would have been a month ago, I was here, we were doing walking meditation. And we were all walking in a circle, and I'm walking behind a certain individual. And then I have this harsh thought in my head about this person. And it seems to have come out of nowhere. So if I'm understanding it right, then I missed the bodily sensations and then recognized it when it became or before it became a feeling, maybe in between there. So then I cut it off and realized, like, I don't have to follow this. I can walk around this person. This actually isn't a problem. Is that like sort of correct, or did it become a feeling and then I cut it off before it became?
You've said it both ways, so I don't know.
So my question, I guess, is where
were you getting annoyed?
Yes,
Okay.
well,
then there was a feeling.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So that's where your mindfulness comes in, where right now you haven't fully developed your mindfulness. So you're like, I don't know if I was annoyed or not. I don't know if I cut it off as a bodily sensation or if it was a feeling, because you haven't brought your mindfulness to full growth, full perfection, and full development. That's what you'll experience as you're practicing right concentration more and more in your practice, which is the meditation. And when you're practicing mindfulness in your day-to-day life more and more, you'll develop the ability that you'll know exactly these things. So right now, the important thing is that you cut it off and you let it go. That's what's important. But over time, you're going to be able to see it very clearly. There's the bodily sensations. They'll be there for maybe 3 seconds, 4 seconds. I've seen them last as long as 8 or 10 seconds before. And then you're able to cut them off. Or it's going to then become a feeling. You're going to be like, whoa, there's the feeling. And you're going to see that, right? And then if you don't do anything about it, you're going to see like, oh, there's the condition of the mind. It kind of sets in on a more long-term basis. And then you'll be able to see these mental objects more and more. So right now you can't see that delineation of it, but that's what you would ultimately like to build up to, where you can see each one of these things. And then this comes through maturing the mind. That time where I saw 8 or 10 seconds of bodily sensations, that was after much meditation and much practice that I saw that. And that's what helps to slow things down so that you can actually get more time to cut off and let go. But when your mind isn't as developed, you will miss the bodily sensations, because it's like the mind just goes boom right into the feeling. There are some bodily sensations there, but it happens so quick that mind ends up right into the feelings. But the more you develop your mind with the meditation and the singleness of mind and the mindfulness, it'll give you this elongated period of time where there are bodily sensations, and you'll get more ability to cut them off and let them go there. And that's ultimately what you would like to get to. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online. Hello to anyone online. All right, I'm not seeing any questions online anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end this portion of our course at this point so we can take a lunch break. Is anybody attached to an hour and a half lunch break? Do you have to have an hour and a half, or you're going to get angry or frustrated or irritated? Nobody? See, you just verified the third noble truth, that when you don't have craving, desire, attachment, there's no discontentedness. Right? So if you had a craving where you really wanted an hour and a half lunch, because I'm not going to be able to do that, you'd be frustrated, you'd be annoyed, you'd be agitated, right? So you can see when your mind doesn't have craving, it doesn't have discontentedness. Okay, so right now it's essentially 10:20, 10:25. If we can come back at 1:30, that would be an hour and a little bit more of lunch. And then that way we'll have time to do the things that we need to do today. Okay, so I'll see you guys perhaps after lunch. We'll start up at 1:30. I'm going to teach you guys breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we'll do it together as a session. So thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn. Enjoy your lunch, and perhaps I'll see you guys after class or after lunch.